Okay, so I am going to get started with my presentation. So if anyone wants to move closer to see the presentation better, you're more than welcome to. So hello everyone, my name is Kathy Vilaysith. I am actually a former alumni from UC San Diego, and I will be presenting you my research that I did a year ago on the Southeast Asian American student experience. I can't believe I did this a year ago and completed the research a year ago, but here I am. So I am going to present you my research and what I found with the Southeast Asian American community at UC San Diego. So my research was centered around the Southeast Asian American students, with my research questions being, what is the impact of the Southeast Asian American identity on the navigation in higher education? How do these students make meaning of their identity and sense of belonging at UC San Diego? How can I increase the visibility of the Southeast Asian American narrative at UCSD? And how can these new insights help inform better resources and services for these Southeast Asian American students? For a little bit of historical context surrounding my research, the historical context surrounding their migration to the United States has impacted in their resettlement and survival. Southeast Asian groups like Lao, Cambodian, and Hmong find themselves a part of the second wave of migration to the United States as an outcome of the Vietnam War. These groups were impacted by several traumatic events, such as the Lao Secret War, Khmer Rouge, and the Hmong diaspora. These traumatic events influenced their migration to the United States, with most Southeast Asian Americans finding themselves being either refugees or coming from a family of refugees, finding themselves resettling in the United States after the Vietnam War. Along with the second wave of migration to the United States, they experienced a more traumatic migration journey and during longer periods of time in the refugee camps before the resettlement. It is also to be noted that the second wave of migration is not voluntary, and the choice was made to escape political persecution by the communist government and that gained control after the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War destroyed the economy and the society of Southeast Asia, leaving three countries, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, in the poorest in the world. Due to the lack of capital that these refugees had during the second wave, they were unable to pass a substantial amount of capital to their children and future generations. The model minority myth in disaggregating data, this perception attributes the success of Asian Americans to their racial identity, working with the assumption that they do not need help or existence. This disregards the fact that the Asian category consists of more than 30 different ethnic groups with their respective differences. The model minority is a stereotype that was coined in the 1960s that claimed that Asian people are high achieving and are able to find success because of their racial identity. And the misconceptions include thinking that Asian Americans are all the same. Asian Americans are not really racial or ethnic minorities. Asian Americans do not encounter major challenges because of their race, and Asian Americans do not require or seek resources and support, and the college degree completion is equivalent to success. There is an important emphasis on culturally relevant programming and institutional agents. It is imperative to create programming such as workshops, retreats, and other activities to educate students, faculty, administrators, and staff about race and diversity. Having a space to speak of lived experiences can help educators better understand the culture and history of the Southeast Asian American students, and potentially use that information to incorporate into the curriculum and programming, thus making it both inclusive and relevant for students. For the sense of belonging, the research shows that it is powerful for students to have connections with individuals and groups from their own communities on campus, having the opportunities for students to develop and strengthen connections to the cultures, and providing the chance for students to give back and positively transform their cultural communities. For my research, I did it at UC San Diego in collaboration with the EPIMED program and services. Giving a bit of background about the university, Asian students make about 37.1% of the undergraduate student population for the academic year 2021 when I did my research, which is approximately 11,829 students. With that same group, there were reported 79 Laotian, 21 Hmong, and 167 Cambodian students, which is about 2% of that Asian group. So you can see that when you break down the numbers, that the Southeast Asian American group is severely lower than the entire Asian group, which is bringing the point of disaggregating data and making sure you are able to see the numbers of how the students enrolled at the university. So for my theoretical framework, I had a theoretical framework that helped inform my research. Janae Panay developed one of the earliest and tested a general ethnic development model. Panay maintained that the idea that ethnic identity is important to the development of minority individuals toward positive self-concept. Jean Panay developed the model of ethnic identity development and presented a 3-stage model for the process of ethnic identity development. The first stage is unexamined ethnic identity. During this stage, individuals have yet to explore their ethnic identity. As a result, it may lead to some students to accept the values and attitudes of the majority culture. It is also during this stage that students may go through diffusion or foreclosure. With diffusion is the lack of interest in one's identity and no commitment to explore it any further. With foreclosure is the state that individuals may show commitment and showcase pride in their ethnic identity but have not yet explored their identity. The second stage is ethnic identity search. The stage is characterized when individuals explore the ethnic identity, usually caused by a situation or event. The situation may vary from being harsh, like experiencing overt racism, or more gradual that is less traumatic. It is also during the stage that we see individuals make an effort to learn more about their ethnic identity, whether that be talking with friends and family, reading literature, taking courses, learning cultural traditions or customs, or attending cultural events. The third stage is ethnic identity achievement. This stage is achieved when individuals are able to accept, internalize, and gain a clear understanding of their identity. Individuals are able to come to terms with the cultural differences between one's ethnic group and the majority culture. The ideal outcome from this stage is that students are able to be secure and confident in their ethnic identity. For my methodology, I chose appreciative inquiry because the approach appealed to me because it was focusing on the positives to bring about change as opposed to deficits. Copyright and Vilaysith appreciative inquiry consists of 4 stages of discovery, dream, design, and destiny. Discover is appreciating the best of what is. Dream is imagining what could be. Design is determining what should be, and destiny creates what will be. The core of this method comes from searching the best in people and their organizations and the relevant world around them. For my research, I was able to complete 3 cycles with 1 post-cycle. Overall, I had a total of 6 participants, 3 who identified as Cambodian, 2 as Lao, and 1 as Hmong. My first cycle was an online survey to gather data about these students and how they currently make sense of their identity, and recognizing that I have students from different years and they are at different points of their identity reflection. And so understanding and being cognizant of that and making sure that I have the answers for all the students. For cycle 2 and 3, they were focus groups that allow students to further reflect on identities and experiences at UCSD. Also, being the cycle 2 and 3, they were to be with other students that share a similar identity and have a dialogue on what the university can do to better serve and support the Southeast Asian American students. The post-cycle was intended to document any learning and growth that the students may have experienced during their participation in my action research. After my cycle, the major theme findings that came out of it was the importance of the Southeast Asian American identity, involvement in student organizations, disconnect with the model minority myth, and the importance of finding community. Students show that they think about their Southeast Asian American identities more times than not, making it a salient point for them. Students share how much joy it brought to them when someone was able to recognize their ethnic identity, as shown with this graph that I did. One of the questions was, how often do you think about or reflect on your Southeast Asian American identity? The answers were either occasionally, often, or always. A student shared during one of the focus groups saying that I remember this one class that I took and I did not like the professor at all. But the moment she recognized that I was Hmong, I was like, oh my God, you know what that is? And I started doing a lot better. I felt happy because she knew that I was Hmong and there was some sort of connection. I started becoming a lot more engaged compared to before. So the students shared their experiences in class and how important their identity as a Hmong American student was to them, and that how much joy it brought to them when their instructors and someone knew their ethnic identities and they didn't really have to explain it, because more often or not, when someone says that they're Lao, Cambodian, or Hmong, the initial reaction is, oh, what is that? I don't know what that is. I'm unaware of that. So when people are able to recognize their ethnic identities, it brought them a lot of joy and confidence in themselves as students and allowed them to do better. Students also shared that they believe the model minority myth has done more harm on their educational journey. It opens the door for misguided assumptions about them as individuals, whether it be about how they appear or where the scales lay. The myth also perpetuates microaggressions and assumes that all Asians are the same and the participants were of another ethnic identity. A student shared one of the focus groups saying, I never felt like the term really resonated with Southeast Asians, including my own family. They came here as refugees and basically started from nothing and had to learn English from scratch. And I definitely needed some sort of assistance. On a personal level, the term itself is detrimental and assumes that I am good at everything, when in actuality I might not be, and it can take a mental toll. So students really shared that they didn't really resonate with the model minority stereotype or assumption, because it didn't really speak to the Southeast Asian American narrative and the story that these students told and they shared, and they really did not resonate with that whatsoever. One of the questions that was on the survey was they were to rank how involved they were involved in on-campus or extracurricular activities, or on-campus extracurriculars or any activities that were on campus. This can include student organizations, internships, and or leader positions. On this question, five out of the six participants answered that they were involved in some way, shape, or form in extracurricular activities. Out of those participants, they stated that they were involved with at least one student organization on campus. There was a participant who stated that they were not involved with any extracurricular activities, but also stated they work about 21 to 25 hours a week. Given the nature of working off campus, that could impact what activities that they are able to partake and participate in. The student may not want to participate in an extracurricular activity that may be involved with the campus, but may want to be involved with extracurricular activities and be involved with the campus, but are unable to do so due to the commitments of work and the responsibilities, as well as this was during the time of COVID, so there was really a difference between, there was a different feeling of being involved on student organizations or anything like that versus in person and online, so that might also impacted the way that they interacted with the campus, seeing that most of the on-campus interactions was done through online, and students may not want to participate anywhere online due to being zoomed out, Zoom fatigue, and just didn't want to be involved with anything beyond what the scope of the responsibilities in classes as a student. Students also shared that the sentiments of engagement, connectedness, and community were apparent in the answers that would define how they define their sense of belonging at UC San Diego. The more that the students felt engaged and connected to, and having some sort of community on campuses contributed to a greater sense of belonging to the campus itself. The students shared that they were a part of one student organization, and that has contributed to a greater sense of belonging, because they were able to make connections with other students. Student organizations centered around their ethnic identity were said to be a positive experience for these students. Finding community is important because students do not meet faces who are Cambodian, Lao, or Hmong very often. The sentiment shared that it can be quite difficult to find someone with the same ethnic identity on a campus of thousands of other students, especially given with the low enrollment of Southeast Asian American students, specifically Lao, Cambodian, and Hmong. Again, it's about 70 Lao students, about 79 Lao students, 21 Hmong, and 167 Cambodian students. So with the lower amount of students on the campus of thousands of other students, it can be quite hard to find connections of someone who has the same ethnic identity. The students shared that if they met someone who was Southeast Asian Americans, more specifically their similar ethnic identity, whether it be Cambodian, Lao, or Hmong, they automatically felt this sense of happiness and this connection because they were able to share an important aspect of their identity and realize that they were not alone at this campus like UCSD, which can be very big and daunting. Through my studies, these are my recommendations of how UC San Diego can better serve and support the Southeast Asian American students, but these recommendations can be applied at other institutions. My recommendations include improving data collection and disaggregating data, increasing support for student organizations and the EPIMED programs and services, and creating a space for Southeast Asian American students. Disaggregating data is important because as I've shown on the surface level, it shows that there are a higher number of Asian students in higher education. But when you dig a little deeper, it is a different picture with lower enrollments of Southeast Asian American students like Lao, Cambodian, and Hmong. Along with this aggregating data, I think it's imperative to improve how universities classify the information that they receive, because sometimes students may hold multi-ethnic identities. For example, a student may be Chinese and Cambodian, but sometimes they are placed in one group over the other, usually the Chinese group because it's the greater of the two, and that's not accurately representing the student population. So the data that I have shown may not be accurate just because students may hold multi-ethnic identities that is not really accurately represented in the disaggregated data. The EPIMED program services is not technically considered as actual student resource center. Students shared with them that they appreciated what the department has done and what they have, and because they serve as an advocate for them or working with them through the college journey. The physical space of the department is limited as there's no real space, and the department currently only, well, at the time, the department currently only had one professional staff, which is Wendy. I recommended increasing support and funding to expand to continue the work that they do and the work that they aspire to do in the future. It will allow EPIMED program services to be seen and considered more of a resource center for students. Currently, the work can be overwhelming, so I'm glad that there is more staff for the EPIMED program services compared to when I did my research, so that is a good thing, and being able to see that would made me happy to see. Student organizations, especially the ones centered around the student racial and ethnic identity, should be supported. The student organizations are shown to have a positive impact on students' sense of belonging and overall educational journey. Students want to have a community that they feel like they are included and belong to. If that is unavailable at that moment, students have shown to take the initiative and create that space for them. They seek to build that space because that is part of their identity that is important to them. It allows them to be more in space and build community with other students that identify similarly with them and contribute to a greater sense of belonging. And students have shared that they really appreciate being in a space with other Southeast Asian American students because, again, it is very daunting to be on a campus where it feels like no one else can relate to who you are and your experiences. And so just being able to be in community with other students and they can share their narrative and stories is really valuable to them, and they want to be able to have that space and have that community for them. Oh, okay. As for my final thoughts, I believe my research is significant. Given the lack of research about the Southeast Asian American group, when I was trying to compile the data in the beginning stages of my action research, I was barely able to find a lot of research about the Southeast Asian American group in regards to higher education and students like that. I hope I was able to add to the research about the Southeast Asian American group. I have a personal connection to this as I identify as Southeast Asian Americans, more specifically Lao American, and I am also a UCSD alumni. And it was when doing this research and talking to these students who were UCSD students, I felt a personal connection to them, and I felt like a lot of what they were speaking about, their experiences here, was very similar to my own experience when I was a student. I didn't know, I knew myself I was Lao American, but I wasn't really given the opportunity to really explore that when I was a student here at UCSD, just because I could never find a community here, and I could never really find another Lao student that I was able to connect with. So a lot of the sentiments that they were sharing during the focus groups really resonated with me, and it's a little daunting to feel like nothing has really changed because I graduated back in 2017, and students are still kind of having these experiences. It's a little discouraging to find that students are still feeling that they don't have a really great sense of belonging at UC San Diego as a Southeast Asian American student. But through this research, I was able to learn and conduct this action research with learn a lot through doing this research. It further affirmed my desire to be an advocate for the Southeast Asian American community in higher education. I hope I was able to provide the participants who participated in this opportunity to reflect on their identity and be in space and community with students who share a similar identity throughout the study. While my research may not provoke any sudden changes at the university level, I do hope students were able to grow from partaking in this study and learning more about themselves and others and contributing to a greater sense of belonging and community for them. I want them to know that they're not alone in higher education, and what they have to say about their stories and experiences is valuable. And then I think on a university level, a lot can be done for the students, but on a personal level, I really do hope that the students were able to take away from being in this study, and that there was someone who was willing to be an advocate for them and wanting to share the stories and the experiences that they had at UCSD. And that will conclude my presentation. So, yes. Thank you so much for listening. I think in terms of, is there any questions or comments?
Hi, my name is Ethel from CogSci. So I missed the very first part. These were all undergraduate students, right?
Yes.
Did they at any point express what they wanted to do post, like, undergrad? Or can you tell us a little bit more about, like, maybe what majors they're in?
Yeah, let me pull it up real fast. So the 6 participants, I had 6. So again, I had 2 who identified as Cambodian, 2 as Hmong, and 1 as Hmong, and 2 Cambodian, 2 Lao. Okay, yes. I had a student who was a 3rd year in biological sciences, one who, and that was one of the Cambodian students, one a Hmong student who was a 4th year in social sciences, and I had a 1st year in computer science who was Laotian, 4th year in physical science who was Cambodian, and the 2 other students who were both Lao and Cambodian, they were both a 2nd year and a 4th year in other fields. Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, I was just curious to learn, like, what they're interested in, like, post-undergrad, or were they able to connect with, opportunities for career or?
So most of these were like high, 4th years and 3rd years, so they were already kind of thinking about the future and post-grad. So I remember one student, they were wanted to be known as a Cambodian scientist. They were really involved with, they were really interested in learning about science, and they were really into the STEM field. And so they really wanted to make a connection between their identity as Cambodian to their career in STEM. And they were really like, wanting to be known as a Cambodian science. That was something that they really wanted to do. The other students, they didn't really share what the post-grad plans were, but they wanted to really be active in also be active for the Southeast Asian American group, specifically their own ethnic identity. These students would start. A student was very active with the Hmong identity, and so the student who was Hmong started the Hmong Student Association here, led that throughout the 4 years of college. So that was something that really impacted them and how they see themselves and what they wanted to do in the future.
Hi there, my name is Tracy. I'm from Warren College. I just wanted to know if the students were from California or from out of state.
They were from California, but they were from different parts of California. So I had a few students that were from the Bay, where there's a big Cambodian community up in the Lowell area. So they were from that area. So, but primarily most of them were from San Diego or Southern California.
Hi, thanks very much for this great presentation. I also missed the beginning, so you may have addressed this. But occasionally you talked about the Southeast Asian community and then the more narrow community. To what extent was there an identity beyond the specific identities? In other words, would there be a reason to have a broader Southeast Asian organization, or would people prefer to have organizations that were specific to their own identities?
I think at this point, to have a group that was Southeast Asian American would be beneficial, but I think it would be even more beneficial if it was specifically focused on the specific identities, just because there are differing experiences with the Southeast Asian American group, and it also includes more than just Lao, Hmong, and Cambodian. I just really focus on those three groups because they were primarily impacted by the Vietnam War, and that really impacted their resettlement here, and really that impacted their experiences in the United States. But I think at the end of the day, as long as there's some sort of support, regardless if it's Southeast Asian or even specifically Lao, Hmong, Cambodian, it would be beneficial. But again, Southeast Asian is such a umbrella term, which not every Southeast Asian group is going to have the same experiences. So I think it is beneficial to have a Southeast Asian group, but it would be even better to have more specifically to the ethnic identity, and because that would speak more to them and they would have more connection to their experiences at UCSD.
Right. Thanks very much. So I missed the beginning. You might have addressed this, but I noticed that you didn't mention Vietnamese students, which I believe is according to the numbers for domestic students, was the second largest Asian American group. And of course, they will have similar experiences. How might that play into this?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, can you clarify?
I noticed you didn't mention Vietnamese students, and there's a relatively large number of Vietnamese domestic students on campus. How would was there a reason for excluding that group?
Yes. So I didn't intentionally include Vietnamese students in this data, in this research, just because. Sorry, let me just find. So one of the reasons was that the research stated that there was the first migration of Southeast Asians to America, and the first wave would being primarily South Vietnamese, and bringing them with a lot of substantial capital, of human capital. So the first wave of refugees had a higher levels of socioeconomic status and educational attainment, while the second wave was primarily Lao, Vietnamese, and Hmong, who did not have that much capital. So they had a harder time acclimating to the United States when they settled here. And then as well, sorry. I just focus on, because the context surrounding the migration of Lao, Hmong, and Cambodian students really impacted the survival here in the United States, and impacting the, future generations and education. I established my own need just to not include Vietnamese, just because the experiences are a little bit different compared to Lao, Cambodian, and Hmong, and which I think can be which tends to be disregarded in the main aspect of like Southeast Asian American students.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. So my question is, as part of the survey, was there any, I guess, questions about resources or connections to the local community? And if so, did that have any impact on their sense of belonging here on our campus?
Outside the campus, okay. So yes, I did ask I asked questions about what resource and support that they currently have, whether it be at UCSD or outside. Students did share that they were involved with community organizations in San Diego, such as Lao SD. I'm forgetting the other organizations and groups that they were a part of, but that connected them to the communities here in San Diego, which provided a greater sense of belonging, but they weren't able to really translate or bring that to campus. So it was a very differing sense of belonging. They were able to feel a sense of community within the greater San Diego area, but in terms of bringing that on campus, it was kind of harder to do that. And they were unable to really find students that were the same ethnic identity, but they were able to find resources outside of San Diego and support.
Kathy, I have one question for you. Is that, one of the things you mentioned is seeing more students on campus brings a lot of sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. And, as we think about the various partners in our symposium, or staff and faculty, for those who don't identify as Southeast Asian, right? Mm-hmm. What are your recommendations in regards to when we interact with them? What can we do on our one-on-one basis, mm-hmm. to make them feel that they belong at UC San Diego, they are Trenton here?
I think a lot of what students were sharing was just really asking them about their stories and narratives and what it means to them to be Southeast Asian American students. They really share that they really want to talk about their identity in being Southeast Asian American, because they have a lot of pride in that. And, sometimes they don't get the chance to do that on campus, whether it be in class or on one-to-one. And just, I think for other folks, they can recognize that there is Southeast Asian American students on campus, and that and kind of unpacking the model minority, because I think that is still prevalent on campus, especially with how people interact with Asian American students. And so really unpacking that and learning that there are more than your East Asian groups that really make up what the model minority myth was, and really asking them to share the culture and share their identity with folks. I think they really students really want to talk about their identity. They don't really get a chance to talk about who they are and the cultures and the traditions inside or outside the classroom. So just being very aware of their aware, and being very wanting to learn more about them and having the space to share who they are.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or thoughts?
I think I'm just kind of, this is more of a comment and less a question. I'm thinking a lot about, the points that you made around student organizations and how meaningful they were in terms of sense of belonging and community and space of retention for the students. And I know that for our students that are very small populations, it's a lot of work to have to secure funding, to do programs and events, and how we, set them up for success when we're, it's like the very thing that they need also requires so much time and navigation skills and information and resources. And so I'm just reflecting about my processes and how I support student organizations in our area and how we might set up different mechanisms to be able to support students without putting so much labor on them for something that they've identified as critical to their retention.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. To even create and maintain a student organization is hard and difficult, and requires more than one student. And so sometimes it's very difficult for students to make connections and ask other students, are you willing to make a student organization with me? Are we able to do this? I do know that there has been talk to create a Lao student organization, but that hasn't come to fruition just because the students, it's difficult being a student as it is, and then having to create and maintain a student organization on top of that is not really feasible or something that they want to do, especially if they are been a part of other student organizations. I think they're aware of how difficult it can be to create that and maintain that and prevent burnout from being a student, and on top of wanting to have this club. So it's kind of a balancing act. So it can be quite difficult, especially with the lower amount of students on campus. I think also pretty difficult in this time of COVID and online learning, where students are not able to really interact with each other like they were able to before, and that may be difficult to find other students who share the similar identity, because once you turn off Zoom, there's really no way to really connect with these students outside of the Zoom. And Zoom fatigue is very real, and that was something that was very prevalent in my, that was a challenge I went through with my research, just because it was the height of the pandemic, and just everything on Zoom was very tiring. I feel like if it was more in person and I was able to gather participants in person, I would have a different, I feel like I would have more participants, because again, I only had one Hmong student, which doesn't speak to all the Hmong experience, and so they're not the end all be all of the Hmong experience at UC San Diego. So I think the pandemic and Zoom just really played a part in how my research played out. And I think if I was able to connect with students in person, it would be a different outcome in terms of the level of participation, because my research was voluntary, and it was all on Zoom and done online. So that's something that might be discouraging to students, because they already spend so much time on Zoom, and they might not want to be on Zoom even more than they have to be.
Are there any more questions or thoughts? That's my exercise for the day.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your research. I just maybe a thought or a question to you and to the group. I'm wondering if there are any opportunities for alums to interact with either incoming or current Southeast Asian students, to maybe speak on their experiences and make that connection, and then maybe further on for job search, for future Just curious if there's been any connections like that.
I haven't. I'm an alumni and I'm Southeast Asian American, so haven't been presented with those opportunities. I mean, I would think that would be very beneficial. I think to see like a Southeast Asian American succeeding and doing well beyond college, and because I think a lot of these students share like it would be nice to have a mentor or someone that is older and that can kind of guide them after post-grad, because they have mentors, but they are not Southeast Asian American, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you know they want to be able to see other Southeast Asian American success stories and seeing what they're doing and kind of see how they are able to use that and guide them in the future.
All right. Oh, no, I see.
I'm involved in the Black Alumni Council, so I am aware that there is an Asian Pacific Islander Alumni Council as well. And Margaret, who's attending the symposium, is the co-chair. And so I think she's a great point to connect. I know that it went dormant for a little while, but that they're working to bring the organization back. And so that could be an avenue for those connections.
And I think just to add to Fanan and Renee is that we know when we first started planning the inaugural symposium, we had a number of folks asking, can I attend? Who's this catered to, right? And initially our charge is towards faculty and staff, but you know, I've received emails from the Alumni Council for the Asian Pacific Islander group, and they had shared, can we attend, right? Can we be part of this? And with, you know, now, I won't tell you when I received that request, but trying to accommodate and also be mindful of COVID and all the spaces that we hold, I think that's something we look forward to in the future, is that as we look at the symposium, how far does this go and what can we do to invite those that can make that change, be part of that creation. So just wanted to provide some additional context too.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie. I'm coming from the Career Center, and I just want to take a minute to share some resources. So I always recommend students hopping on Triton's Connect. It was created by our alumni colleagues, and it is a mentorship platform that helps connect current staff and current students, as well as alumni too. So it's a great way for you to visit the directory and see if there's any folks that are in the field that you would want to be in, or in a career position that you would want to pursue one day. It's a great way to start establishing that connection. Also, LinkedIn has an alumni tab that is a wonderful resource for you to pull out some profiles of folks who are in a field or industry that you are aspiring to pursue. And here at the Career Center, we assist alumni up to 1 year after graduation. So once they've graduated, I know some of them are worried that they might not have access to our career resources, but they still do. So if you see any alumni or Kathy, if you have any alumni friends or yourself too who are recent graduates, we're happy to help you network and connect you with a mentor.
All right, with that being said, thank you all for participating. Please give a round of applause to Kathy.